Hi everybody, it's You Had to Ask, the show where I answer your questions. And this week my first question comes from Mark Arangis, who says, your video about Jerry Lewis got me thinking about Brian De Palma's Untouchables. I feel about it the same way. Everybody praises it, but apart from De Niro as Capone, it's a cheesy film with corny dialogue delivered badly, with some characters being almost cartoonish, and it takes itself too seriously like it's some amazing crime epic. Anyway, my question is, what do you think of the film? I'm interested. Cheers. I agree with you. I'm not a big fan of The Untouchables. And I'm not a big fan of De Palma in general. There was another question. Adderall Apocalypse asked about my opinion of the film Femme Fatale, which was another De Palma movie, and about just De Palma in general. And De Palma's not one of my favorites. I haven't actually seen Femme Fatale. The last De Palma film I saw in the theater was The Black Dahlia, and I just thought that was a mess. I just thought it was typical of most De Palma, in that it was a lot of style and very little substance and very little clarity of story or character. It was just there's just nothing really compelling about it. And he has a very distinctive style as a director. He's a great stylist. But like a lot of other great modern cinematic stylists, Tim Burton is another example. He's so into the style and his own sort of vision for the film that he forgets to tell a story. And I think that's De Palma in a nutshell. And I agree with you. I agree with everything you say about The Untouchables. There's a good De Niro performance, but not a great one. Costner is good, but not great. Sean Connery is good, but not great. And I think his character, I don't know who you mean by cartoon character, but I think the Connery character is as much of a cartoon as anybody in the film. And his is the character and the performance that is sort of the big celebrated performance. He won the Oscar for it. It was the part of it that everyone was talking about. Visually, it's beautiful. I love the way 1930s Chicago looks in it. I love the costume design. I love the art direction. I mean, it's a beautiful looking film, as most of De Palma's films are. But nothing particularly interesting happens in it. And that, to me, is a flaw. IR138, how do you respond to the oft-repeated straw man that without God, your life has no meaning other than eat, breed, die? I find the best response is to ask that whoever is making this statement please refrain from presuming to tell me what my life means. You don't get to tell me what my life means, and neither does anybody else. And if God exists, He doesn't get to tell me either, and I don't get to tell you, and I don't get to tell anybody else. We derive our own meaning. We define our own purpose. We decide, consciously or unconsciously, what is important to us in our life and what gives our life meaning. And if someone is making that statement and saying, without God, your life is meaningless, perhaps, and maybe this is a bit too psychoanalytical, but perhaps what they're really saying is that without God, their life is meaningless. And if that is truly the case, I feel sorry for whoever that is. Hexer Sai, a question on images and views. What is your opinion on American exceptionalism? How do you think the Western/entire world views the USA? And what is your view of Europe? My view of American exceptionalism is that there is no such thing, in the sense that most people who crow about American exceptionalism mean that term. President Obama said a couple years ago that American exceptionalism is no different than British exceptionalism or Greek exceptionalism or what have you. Everybody is proud of where they are from. Everybody likes to talk about the positive things and the accomplishments of their civilization. But pretty much every civilization has those sorts of accomplishments. Not always on the same scale, not always to the same level of global importance, but to suggest that there's something unique about the United States. And see, the problem is that most American exceptionalists don't base their concept of American exceptionalism on the actual accomplishments of our society, or on our actual principles and our ability to live out those principles. It's by definition. America is an exceptional place because it's America. It's innate in the nation, in the country, that we are exceptional. And that's why it's just bullshit because anyone else living in any other country could make the same claim. A person from Canada who was incredibly patriotic could say, there's not another country on earth that is as good as Canada. Canada is the most exceptional nation, by definition, on the globe. That's exactly what most American exceptionalists say about America. And there's just as much evidence for that claim about Canada as there is for those claims about the United States. So I don't buy it. I'm proud of my country for things that we have done, for our ideals, for our accomplishments. I'm proud of my country for our rule of law, for our peaceful transfer of power, for our Constitution, for our civil liberties, and for the motion of our history, the progressive trend in our history toward greater civil liberties and a more tolerant, open society. I'm proud of my country for our engineering feats. I'm proud of my country for sending people to the moon, the greatest public works project in the history of mankind, the space program. I'm proud of us for that. But I don't believe there's anything innate just in the American character that we've been bestowed by God somehow, this special status. I don't buy that for a second. And as for how the rest of the world sees us, I mean, I don't know. I get the impression that other parts of the world view America with some disdain. They view us as a very important country, but as a country that maybe is far too aware of its importance and far too eager to remind other countries of its importance. And I completely recognize that myself as an American. I mean, I think that's how a lot of non-Americans around the world perceive my country, and I think that they're right. I think we are like that, and that we shouldn't be like that. And how do I perceive Europe? Europe is a place I would really like to visit. I've never been to Europe. I would like to go. I think Europe is, both collectively as a continent and as the individual countries, it's a place of such rich cultural history, that really far richer than the United States. Even though the United States has a wonderful cultural history that I'm not trying to denigrate by saying that. It's just that Europe has so much more diversity and such a longer era of recorded history than the United States does. That you know, it's one of the things that Americans do tend to swagger about a little bit, that they really have no right to. I mean, in terms of culture and history and just the amount of it that there is, Europe has it all over us. Here's one from Mathias. Hi Steve, I was watching videos from American YouTubers recently, and I came across quite a few comments equating socialism to fascism. At first I thought it was ironic, because socialism is one of the most harmless ideologies I can think of. It's like communism's awkward and mildly gay cousin. But the comments seemed genuine. Could you explain that? How prevalent is this opinion in America? Cheers, mate. It's fairly prevalent. It's especially prevalent among people who are more politically to the right. Conservatives make this equation between socialism and fascism as though they are the same thing. And I think the reason is that there is a very harshly libertarian concept of freedom and liberty among right-wing folks in the United States that refuses to tolerate any sort of government molestation at all. Any sort of government oversight, regulation, taxation, anything other than pure, absolute 100% personal freedom is viewed as an intolerable, tyrannical imposition. So if you look at a system like socialism or a system like fascism, which are very different systems, and in fact have been opposed to one another throughout their history, that it's to many libertarians, many far-right folks who are just interested in the government leaving them alone, and that's all they want out of life, is for the government just to leave them alone. They don't find a real meaningful distinction between socialism and fascism, because they see both of them as forms of government coming in and pressing down on them and keeping them from doing what they want. The philosophical distinctions between the two, and the practical ones as well, just don't really seem to matter. Sarah Septum, what's the secret/key to a good marriage? I am hardly the expert, but from where I stand, the secret is to find another person who you enjoy spending time with, who enjoys spending time with you, who you care about making happy and are able to make happy, and who cares about making you happy and is capable of making you happy. That reciprocity is very important. So now that you know, off with you. You know how easy it is. Go and have a good marriage. Terry James, it seems that modern libertarians have claimed a monopoly on the word freedom and have labeled anybody who disagrees with them as statists. What's the best way to combat this, and how does your idea of freedom differ from that of libertarians? That's what we were just talking about a question or so ago. My view of freedom, I think, differs from libertarians because, as I mentioned in my answer to that previous question, I think most libertarians view freedom purely in individual terms. They view freedom, personal liberty, as being able to do whatever I want and not having to follow anybody's rules, or at least having to follow the least number of rules possible. The libertarian philosophy of the government governs best, which governs least. And my philosophy is that for true freedom, there has to be not only the freedom to do whatever you want, but there has to be a potential in your society to pursue your happiness. You have to have opportunities available to you that are realistic, that you can pursue in order to exercise your freedom and your liberty. And so I think that personal liberty is very important, but it must be balanced with a kind of common liberty, a kind of social responsibility, or social justice, I guess you might call it, where yes, people are free as individuals to do what they want to do most of the time, but there are certain limitations imposed to keep them from doing whatever they want in such a way that keeps other people from doing what they want or harming people, etc. And in addition to those limitations, there are also certain responsibilities imposed on all of us that make life better for everybody and make life better for society as a whole, including things like taxation, like providing government benefits to the less fortunate, like providing infrastructure, roads, postal delivery, police protection, fire departments, etc., things like that. All of those things are institutions and structures that contribute to the overall health of a society. And I think a healthy society is just as important as giving individuals the right to do whatever they want. So I think that's the major difference between what a libertarian would think of as liberty and what I would think of as liberty. I think of liberty as inextricably integrated into this larger system. And as the best way to combat that, if you're arguing with a libertarian, is I think just to articulate that position that I just attempted to articulate, and to explain how, yes, we are individuals. We have individual rights, and those rights are very, very important. But that we must also never lose sight of the fact that even the most independent individual in a society is still a member of a society and is therefore inescapably responsible to the other members of his society and dependent on those other members of society. That we're in this together whether we like it or not. And to just say, you know what, let's just have the government back off and we'll just let everybody do what they want and keep out of everybody's way and it'll all just work itself out, that is not a realistic option. Logical Cake, how many takes does it take you to do your videos? Do you have some hilarious blooper footage lurking on some hard drive somewhere? It can take multiple takes, especially the scripted videos, like the 5 Stupid Things videos and Riffing on Mail Call, and even the and now the Good News videos, which are very short but are still scripted segments where I have to say things that I've memorized on camera. They can take multiple takes, and sometimes depending on how much I fuck up or whether there's a distraction from outside or from somewhere in here, the cat's doing something or whatever, it can take multiple takes. I don't usually save unusable takes. In fact, most of the time, I will delete unusable takes right off the camera. I don't even put them on the computer to edit them because it just speeds up the editing process a lot to only use the takes that you know you're going to use. And I don't save bloopers generally. I'm not that interested in, I'm not as interested in bloopers as other people are. I mean, I think they can be funny from time to time, but the truth is, if something uh, impromptu happens during the shooting of a video and I think it's worth showing you, I probably have shown it to you. I left it in or I put it on at the end. There's very little footage of all of the hundreds of videos that I've shot. There's very little footage that I have not shown you that I feel is worth showing you. If I thought it was worth showing you, you've seen it. It's in the video. So there's not like an archive of bloopers. Serious Mind, you may have answered this elsewhere, but if not, what is your favorite 3 Star Trek episodes, any of the series, and why? Mine are all original series: Taste of Armageddon, The Enterprise Incident, and Balance of Terror. There are so many to choose from. It would be easy. I could probably come up with favorite 3 lists over and over again, and they would each be equally valid. But the 3 that I'll tell you about are, it's 1 each from the original series, Next Generation, and Deep Space Nine. The one from the original series is actually the most difficult to choose because there are so many episodes of Star Trek the original series that I just love, either because I genuinely think they're good, well written, well acted, whatever, television, or that they're just so bad that they're incredibly enjoyable for that reason. But the one that I think I will choose is the episode Amok Time, which is the famous episode with Spock going through his mating phase where he has to return to Vulcan to take a wife or he'll die. And he's very tense for the whole episode, very short-tempered and quick to anger. And there's that great shot where he smashes his monitor when someone from the bridge is trying to contact him. And then it ends with that great fight between Kirk and Spock, their fight to the death through some contrivance of Vulcan ceremony. Great balance of drama and sort of interesting character reveals about Spock. We learn more about how alien Spock is, but it's done in a way that underlines his humanity. It's a really nice piece of writing with Spock. And a great sense of humor. There's a great line from Kirk when he's down on Vulcan fighting Spock, where McCoy says, "Jim, you're going to have to kill him." And Kirk says, as an aside to McCoy, "Kill Spock? That's not what I came to Vulcan for, is it?" Just wonderful, wonderful interaction between the 3 main characters, Kirk and Spock and McCoy. And a great ending where Spock thinks he's killed Kirk, and it turns out that Kirk is still alive, and Spock sees him, and he's overwhelmed by surprise and emotion, and he grabs him by the shoulders and goes, "Jim!" And he's so obviously happy and smiling, just glad to see him, and then he immediately shuts down and brings the Vulcan wall back up, and he's like, "I'm so pleased to see you, Captain." And just a great episode. I mean, there are dozens of original series episodes I could pick as my favorite, but I think Amok Time is really my favorite. I just love that episode. For Next Generation, again, it's a little easier than for original series, not because Next Generation isn't a great show, but just because my favorites tend to stand out from the pack a little more sharply. But I think I'll choose Tapestry. The episode, it's a Q episode. I think it's the best Q episode, where Captain Picard is sent back in time to his younger days, to his days when he's fresh out of Starfleet Academy, and he's sent there by Q to prevent himself from getting into a fight that eventually gets him stabbed through the chest and results in him having to have an artificial heart. So that then years into the future, or the present as the show is being produced, he won't have an accident and die as a result of his failing artificial heart. And there's really great interaction between Picard and Q. I think the chemistry between Picard and Q is one of the most reliable sources of enjoyment from Next Generation, and their chemistry, their interaction in Tapestry is just phenomenal. And there's a lot of it. There's a lot of Picard and Q scenes throughout the show. And it has a nice message. It has Picard realizing that what he thought of as a regret or as a mistake actually was one of the formative experiences of his life, and it made him the man that he was. And when he went back and changed it and took that away for a moment it really, really altered the course of his life and made him into a very different person, and a person that he really wasn't happy being. And he realized that he was better off with that horrible regret in his past, with that getting stabbed and having the artificial heart. That, yes, at the time it seemed horrible, and the more rational and deliberate Picard of the future might say, boy, I wish I could go back and change that. But he realized that he was actually the product of that experience, and that he couldn't change it, or he would change who he was. Really, really good episode. And then the last one, the Deep Space Nine episode, is The Visitor, which is my favorite episode of Star Trek of anything. It's my favorite, the movies, the TV episodes of all the series, anything. The Visitor, Deep Space Nine is my favorite Star Trek thing ever. I just love it. It's it's a Jake story, and like Tapestry, it involves a character sort of trying to reach into the past to affect a change, to make the present for him better, or to change the future. But it's different. It's Jake Sisko, Captain Sisko's son, as an old man who is hoping to change an event in the past that resulted in Captain Sisko being the victim of an accident in engineering on the Defiant and becoming trapped in subspace, where he's cut off from reality, and he only just sort of appears to Jake every now and then, almost as like a ghost for a few minutes at a time, as Jake lives the rest of his life. And it's a really sad story. It really focuses on the relationship between Captain Sisko and his son, which is one of the things that made Deep Space Nine unique, that relation, that having a major character have a child that was a really major, consistent part of the show. It had never really been done before. It hasn't really been done since in Star Trek. I mean, Worf had a son, Alexander, on Next Generation, but the writers felt free to just ignore him whenever it was convenient, and he wasn't always even on the show. But Jake was always there on Deep Space Nine, and he was always portrayed as a very consistent part of Sisko's life, and a very important part. And that was a really significant part of Sisko's character. And that relationship is really explored and really brought to life in The Visitor. And it's done in such a beautiful way, and such a sad way. And it's an off-format episode. You know, it doesn't take place on the ship or on the space station. Primarily, it follows Jake wherever his life takes him. And it's really beautiful. It's a really genuinely well-made, well-written, well-acted, beautiful piece of television. And one of the relatively few Star Trek episodes I can say genuinely is affecting to me. Like, it really moves me in a very sincere way. And that's what I love about it. It gets to me, and it's a great episode. And it's my favorite Star Trek episode of anything, ever. It's The Visitor from Deep Space Nine. And you know what? The lightning round is probably the visitor of this You Had to Ask series, because it's my favorite part. So let's get to it. It's time for
the lightning round. Rapid fire questions, glib and adequate answers.
Isaac Barlow. Have you seen any movies that made you openly weep? Thanks again. Love the show. Batman and Robin kind of made me want to cry when I saw it. In a more sincere way. Actually, when I was a kid, The Land Before Time used to get to me. I don't know if I ever openly weeped, but it really used to fucking, get me a little misty-eyed. Gurin Prime. Will you ever do an Atheist Reads for a book written by a Catholic or a non-Christian? Yeah, probably. I don't have any specific plans for one right now, but I'm sure if I do it long enough, I'll get around to a Catholic book, or maybe like a Muslim book, or something like that. Sure. Dangerously Talented. What does the fox say? Well, I'm terrible at impressions, so bear with me, but I think it's something like, oh, is that close? Mobile Abortionist. Hi, Steve. I was once told that using butter would help with backdoor sexual intercourse. I was just wondering if you thought that would make things easier. I've never tried it myself, but it was all that Marlon Brando needed to cornhole Maria Schneider. So if it's good enough for Brando, it should be good enough for you. Fenrique. Hey, Steve, Mad World aside, can you think of any instance of a cover song ending up better than the original? Oh, and that cover of Mad World from Donnie Darko is just beautiful, isn't it? I agree with that. That's a great cover. Yeah, there are lots of covers I think are better than the originals. The two that spring to mind immediately when I look at the question are the Jimi Hendrix version of Bob Dylan's All Along the Watchtower and the Ray Charles version of Eddie Arnold's You Don't Know Me. James Francesco, would you like to read some of my poetry and tell me if it's pretentious sophistry or not? No. Spinvis2627, can you try to say something in Klingon? I'm not an expert on Klingon, but there's a Klingon greeting that I think is literally translated supposedly as "What do you want?" And to the best of my recollection, it's something like "Nuch nech." Nerd. Green Ghost 2008. What is it about Star Trek that you like? I like the fact that it is a fun adventure show with interesting characters that at times is enjoyably cheesy and at other times is capable of really genuine insight and evoking sincere emotion from me. That's what I like about it. Rob Plosky, Man of Steel or Superman Returns? You have to watch one. Which would you rather watch? Rob must be new around here. It's nice to know, actually, that I'm still gaining subscribers at a fast enough clip that I have subscribers who are unaware of the fact that Superman Returns is one of my very favorite movies ever. I love fucking Superman Returns. So it is the easiest question I have ever been asked on You Had to Ask. Would I rather watch Man of Steel or Superman Returns? I'd rather watch Superman Returns. I'd rather watch Superman Returns 1,000,000 times in a row than watch Man of Steel one more time. Superman Returns is an awesome movie. It's the best superhero movie ever made. Fuck Man of Steel. Cinema Nerd 14. Hey Steve, love the show. Do you think evolution is faith-based conception like religion in some instances? Keep up the good work and thanks. No. No, it is not. That's it for the questions. That's it for the lightning round. Before I get out of here, of course, I'm going to do a shout out. The shout out this week goes to Not In My Name 2050, also known as the Science of Sarcasm. He makes awesome videos. He's been at it for a while. A lot of you are probably already subscribed to him or at least know of him. He does videos about science. He does videos about atheism. He even does movie reviews every now and then. He did a video on the science of Prometheus and how the science in Prometheus is a little wacky. And he did a movie review of Star Trek Into Darkness. He didn't like it nearly as much as I did. He was not really a fan of it. But hey, what fun would it be if we all agreed on everything? Not In My Name 2050, a really great channel. The Science of Sarcasm. If you're not subscribed or you haven't watched his stuff, check it out. He's been kind of inactive lately. It's been a few months since he made a video, so maybe if he gets a couple of subs fresh in his inbox, he'll maybe be motivated to make a few more videos, because I really enjoy his stuff and I hope that he keeps it up. So that is it for this edition of You Had to Ask. I will be back next week to do this all over again, assuming of course that you ask me some questions, because of course for this to happen you have to ask. So please leave a comment on this video. Ask me anything about anything. Nothing is too serious. Nothing is too trivial and silly and frivolous. Ask me anything about anything. Whatever you want to hear me talk about, ask me, and I will answer as many questions as I possibly can in the next video. So, until then, have a good one.